8 additional plaintiffs have now joined on to the challenge of Texas's new abortion restrictions. They're joining the 7 that launched the case back a couple of months ago. 15 plaintiffs now telling their stories about how these new anti-abortion laws have contributed to a massive amount of suffering in their lives. And we're gonna share some of the details that these people have talked about their experiences, because I can't think of a better way to get people to understand the actual cost, the toll to these sorts of policies. So this is gonna be difficult. These experiences are very rough, and buckle up. Jessica Bernardo, Kiersten Hogan, Elizabeth Weller shared harrowing stories of fetal anomalies, medical gaslighting, and in Hogan's case, being detained at a religious hospital against her will and being forced to give birth to a stillbirth son. Let's jump into some of these examples. Weller was hospitalized after her water broke at 19 weeks. She was given antibiotics and, according to the suit, instructed to pray. Her OBGYN concluded that without an abortion, she risked an infection and could lose her uterus or even her life. But the hospital, again, a religious hospital, refused to clear the procedure because the antibiotics made such an infection less likely. Okay, there was no talk of an abortion, no talk of emergency procedures. They said they would wait, monitor the situation, and hope that her prayer, I guess, was answered. 2 of the women in the original suit, Lauren Miller, Ashley Brandt, had been pregnant with twins. Each discovered that one of her twins had severe abnormalities and wouldn't survive. In both cases, only by aborting the doomed twin could they protect the life of the viable one, as well as their own health. And of course, that is deemed unacceptable in this case. No, you have to continue the pregnancy, even if it results in the loss of the second fetus or the loss of the mother. That's the actual policy, in fact. We have Kylie Beaton, again, severe like developmental issues during the pregnancy. In this particular case, the head normal rate faster than the rest of the body of the fetus. By the time she received the diagnosis at 20 weeks, her baby's head was the size of a 24-week-old. That only increased. She was already, by the way, past the cutoff point for an abortion in neighboring New York at that point, or New Mexico at that point. By the time she was 28 weeks pregnant, her baby's head was the size of a 39-week-old fetus. She asked to be induced, but providers refused, citing the state's abortion ban. At 35 weeks, she was finally granted a cesarean section. Her son survived for 4 days. And we have one more I want to talk about. And again, severe developmental issues. Fetus develops missing pieces of brain and skull. It's a fatal diagnosis. Again, that seems definitive in this sort of case, but Texas is not a reasonable place. It simply isn't. Samantha Cassiano says that she was told she would have to go through with the pregnancy, prescribed an antidepressant, and sent home. She spent the remainder of her pregnancy accepting well wishes from strangers while planning a funeral for her daughter. Her daughter lived for 4 hours after birth, but she was forced to still continue the pregnancy for months and months and months, knowing that it was not going to survive. These are unacceptably heart-wrenching, horrific stories. And this is just the 15 people that have come forward so far. Every day it is possible that people in Texas are experiencing the exact same thing. And so I am very hopeful about this challenge. We'll see. Sabrina, what do you think?
That's scary. That's so scary. Because also Texas is a really, really, really big state. So even if somebody wanted to try to travel outside of state, to take off work, to travel that distance, to recover, like it's so much harder than it would seem. So it's very scary. A lot of women are dying and are going to die as a result of this. So I'm also very hopeful for this lawsuit, because this absolutely needs to be overturned. I don't know if there are doctors who are still doing it because it's the right thing to do. Hopefully they are, but this is scary and just wrong and evil.
Yeah, I mean, look, the issue is that there are some doctors who wanted legal cover to never have to do a procedure like this. Again, not because of their medical expertise, but because of their predisposition politically or religiously. And then there's a lot more that probably would be perfectly happy to do these sorts of procedures, but are terrified. The reason they're terrified is we talk about the state by state bans, and we'll be like, this one has no exceptions. This one has an exception for incest. This one has an exception for the health of the mother. As if those terms mean a specific thing. They don't. They're just the beginnings of a legal process. You would say we're doing this for X reason, But who gets to decide if it fits? Well, officials in that state get to decide. Judges appointed by red state governors get to decide. And when the penalties are as bad as they are for the doctors, so for instance, in Texas, doctors who are found guilty of providing an abortion in violation of the bans face up to 99 years in prison and a minimum of $100,000 in fines, which might be hard to pay off when you're spending the next century in jail. Are you going to be willing to go through this process for each individual case? We have to go before a judge and you have to prove all this stuff, and they're challenging the science even though they don't know what it is. They're terrified, and so they don't want to lose their license. They don't want to be fined. They certainly don't want to be locked up. And so even in cases where the exception exists, it doesn't exist in practice. And that's how this is designed. Those exceptions are not put in place because they've looked at, man, there are a lot of people getting pregnant and having these horrible experiences, so let's protect them. They do it to sell the policy because they know how radical these policies are. They're trying to avoid the electoral backlash. But the backlash exists. It just exists in terms of human suffering for the people that have to live under this regressive political regime. Anyway, also, final point goes to you.
Yeah, can I ask, like, how are laws like these even enforceable when HIPAA laws exist? Like, how, like, this is people's private medical information. I don't even know what that process is like. Like, have they been successful at all in charging any people for getting abortions in Texas? Like, would you happen to know that?
I haven't seen any like successful prosecutions, but we will definitely look into it. Anyway, it's definitely the idea. A hearing in the case hasn't been set yet, so we have no idea at this point what the actual timeline will be. But I think a lot of people in Texas and in other states are really curious to see how this goes. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.